Well, hello, everybody. I am so excited you can join us for our first podcast for Storytime with DrBev and Marshall. Oh my gosh, as we talk about LGBTQ history, we are both from Phoenix. I think at this moment we are both somewhere else. So
That's
I know
right.
I am in Southern Arizona at Bisbee. So if you hear things like that, that is a truck going by because I'm literally right next to the main road. So there may be some noise interference, but we're just gonna roll with it because look at this beautiful background. That's not a green screen. That is where I'm sitting. So Doc Bev, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our first podcast. I am Dr. Bev, as it shows, and I have had the pleasure of being a storyteller now for a number of years. And yes, I am located outside of the Phoenix area at this moment. You see, I had the opportunity to travel to Mobile, Alabama. And who thinks of Mobile, Alabama as an opportunity? However, in this opportunity, I went to my brother-in-law's memorial, and I found out that Mobile, Alabama, is actually where the Mardi Gras began. And my brother-in-law was the, I guess, Grand Marshal, you would call, of the Mardi Gras parades. And so they called him the Dancing Man. And so they established a day for him after he passed. And I went to the memorial. However, what happened while I was there for those few days, I was able to encounter this young person who told me his story about coming out. It was amazing. I love the story, and I was able to ask him if he would be a part of our very first podcast. And it is with great honor and a privilege to bring this young man to you all so that you can hear his story. His name is David Bush. And so we're going to bring him on now and let him tell his wonderful story that I'm so excited to hear again. Please.
Hello, hey everybody. Hey, I'm Bill.
Hey.
Miss Marsh, how you guys doing?
Well, it's so funny because when I first started talking to Bev and she was like, I'm going to Mobile, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And she was like, what do you know about Mobile? So we started chatting a little about Mobile. And then it was like, I don't know, like a couple of days later, she called and was like going, oh, I've got an amazing story. Oh my gosh. It's about David. And I was like, let's go. Let's make this happen. So I'm so happy you can
Absolutely.
join us.
Yes, my story is very, very, very surprising, I would say the least. It's not the typical story that you normally hear when people say, oh, my parents found out or my dad found out or this, that, and the third. And it was like dropping bombs on people and all this other kind of stuff that's normally, tied in with anybody who's coming out. So you want me to just start from the story or?
Just
Yeah. So
go for it.
so you came out in Mobile, Alabama.
Well, I live in Atlanta, Georgia now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm from Mobile, Alabama, and I lived there my whole life. Well, technically, I'm an Army brat from Colorado Springs, but Mobile is my hometown, and that's where my dad is from. He's from Mobile. My mom's from Colorado, so they met when he was in the Army, and then they had me, the best time of their lives. Very
You
short
didn't
time.
say it was so modest, Bev. You said nothing about David being so modest.
Not vain at all. But it's like one of those things when people always ask, when did you know? When did you become gay? And I always thought that was such a weird question to me because it was like I didn't wake up in the morning and be like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna make my life a little bit harder. Like it didn't happen like that. It was just like as you grow, I thought I was more mature than the other boys. Like the girls that do stuff, we be outside in recess and they may be, I don't know, jumping the rope or something. They just losing their mind. And I'm thinking like, I mean, it's just Sarah, like there's nothing special. Like it didn't click to me that I was, you know, different than other boys. And another thing that was kind of confusing is I like sports, I like cars, you know what I mean? The typical thing for what we consider straight, I liked all those things. I like, you know, working on cars and changing brakes and you know what I mean? But then as I got older, you know, you kind of discover that like, oh, it's not that I'm mature, is I don't like what they like. It's a difference. It was a big difference, and then you become basically a Broadway actor. Everything you do becomes an act. It's like sing. Like you're in front of your parents, you deepen your voice. You stop talking with so many gestures, and you lower your cadence and stuff. And you do stuff like that because you're trying to mask. You're trying to be behind this closet, behind this door, and trying to live to these expectations that you created in your head. And then, you know, growing up in the South, growing up in Mobile, you know, it's very conservative, and it's the Bible Belt. So you have things, you see other kids and other people who like came out and, you know, even at school, they getting harassed and bullied and all that kind of stuff. And you were like, oh no, that cannot be me. I have to hide behind this facade of and present it to people in a well-wrapped package. Even I had girlfriends. You know what I mean? I was the jock. I was, you know what I mean? I ran track. I did like everything I can think of where I consider masculine to hide who I was. And you know, those kind of things are very, very draining. So a big part of my life, I never felt like I was able to fully express who I was. For a long time, I was considered the quiet kid, the you know, oh, he don't say much and all that kind of stuff, because I had this deadly fear. If I said the wrong thing or if I hit one of these, the cat's out the bag. And it was very, very like nerve-wracking, and you kind of live on edge. And then you hear stuff. You hear your family talks about stuff and talk about the LGBTQ, and you know, some of it positive, some of it negative, but a lot of it's rooted in ignorance of the topic. They're not bad people. They're not mean or malice or evil. They love you dearly, but it's one of those things that they don't know. You just don't understand. You don't understand how, you know, talking about, gay people on TV. Oh my God. Like how the 2-year-old boys looking at that and being like, well, I'm not going to say nothing. I'm going to stay quiet. I'm not going to do that. So going throughout the years, like just kind of rolling through it to how it came out, I feel like I came out multiple times. And as most gay people have to, you have to come out to this person and come out to this person and come out to that person so many times in your life. And I find it very odd that when somebody presumes that you're straight and then you have to come out again. Like when I'm at work, when I first start working a job or something like that, you know, you live it more reserved and very professional and astute and all that kind of stuff. And they say something like, oh my God, I know your girlfriend must love you. Or, oh, I bet you have the girls going crazy. And I'm thinking like, you got a brother? Like, so it's one of those things that you have to like let your guard down. But even when I was working, I still had this facade. They say stuff and I just roll with it. And then when you built up this fear and all this pressure on yourself, it's like, whew, thank God they don't think I'm gay. Oh, this gonna affect me in such a dramatic way. Like I remember I wanted to get a promotion at I used to work at Winn-Dixie, and I was like front end like cashier number 1 at the time, and I wanted to become front end manager and lead. And it was another guy who was very openly gay and very flamboyant. and I heard them have a conversation. I was in a meeting. They was talking about, promotions and stuff. He been there longer than me. And this very Southern white guy was like, and excuse my language, but he said, I ain't gonna promote no faggot. I'm not gonna do that. He out his mind. I'm like, and then like everybody's agreeing and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys are monsters. Like, it's crazy. So I even hit it deeper. It's like it's those emphasis in life that make you like, he's saying this behind closed door. He don't know I'm gay. It's a bigger shell.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a bigger shell, and it just goes and transitions and stuff. Like even we had this one beautiful young lady. She's a transgender. And she was completely transgender, top, bottom surgery, completely transgender, live her life as a woman, but she was in the legal process of getting her name changed. So I'm just gonna use aliases. Let's say her name is Rebecca, but her real government born name, her dead name is Ronald. So when I got promoted, I'm doing the schedule. So when she got hired, she introduced herself as Rebecca and all this other kind of stuff. And it was Rebecca. I'm like, okay. So now I'm doing the schedule. I'm like, where's Rebecca? And who the hell is Ronald? I'm trying to figure this out. I'm confused. I called my upper manager. They was like, I don't know no Rebecca. I know I interviewed a Ronald. And I'm like, I know Ronald. What are you talking about? Like, I'm thinking like these people are incompetent. How they don't know the difference between Rebecca and Ronald? And I called Rebecca into the office and I was like, hey, I think they interviewed you wrong. They got you as Ronald. And you just seen her face. She was like, she had to come out again. This is a 35-year-old woman that has to come out. And she think I'm, you know what I mean? And I'm going to have this because I'm looking so confused and all this other kind of stuff. And I have like a very... when I'm confused, but I'm really just happy. But I'm thinking they're stupid, so I'm sounding very passionate in my speech, and she think I know, and I'm getting ready to bust her out and all this other kind of stuff. And she says, "I'm Ronald," and I'm like, "No, you Rebecca." And then she was like, "No, I'm Ronald, but I am Rebecca." And it's like, oh, you're Rebecca. You're not Ronald, you're Rebecca. And when I did this and this, she looked at me and was like, she was very like, we recognize when somebody do certain actions that like, oh, he's an ally, or oh, he's
right,
gay, or whatever. And I seen like once you put out the schedule, I couldn't change her name. So I did put out the schedule. I used to always black out that and it just be her last name. And I just started doing that for everybody. I just said, oh, that's what I do. I just block out people's names so you got their last name, whatever. But somehow they got the paper, looked through the light, and seen that the name was Ronald because they seen that because the schedule's put in the hallway. And once they found out that she was born a man, it was like hell broke loose. They was like, they didn't want to use the restroom no more. And I'm like, she has all the female anatomy. I promise you, she's not the one you need to be worried about in the bathroom. You need to be worried about these men. And they were just upset right in corporate and all this other kind of stuff. And corporate came down and was like, look, we cannot do this. This is against the law. You guys will get fired. You will get her shut down. You call her by her preferred name. We don't want to hear nothing else about her, which is a very good thing that the company did that. But they just treat her so bad to the point where she literally moved to New Orleans. But she got her name illegally changed. And once that happened, she moved to New Orleans under Rebecca. So they didn't know.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but it's crazy that was in 2014. That was right before I moved up into Atlanta. And it was crazy that somebody, she had to go through that. She had to deal with that. And I know she has, and me and her talked, we became friends, whatever, and I still follow her on Facebook. And she's like married and all this other stuff, and she living her beautiful life. But it was crazy. She thanked me before she left, and she said, "You really changed my perception on what I believe in people." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." You know. But that
well
was
done. That's actually really cool. That I guess the fact that she didn't know who you were
But she figured out.
beyond just a colleague, and so
Yeah.
finding going in expecting an adversary and walking out of the room with an ally must have put a huge smile on her face.
Right. We became like, we was click tight.
Aw.
Yeah. And it's things that, like, it's not my job to judge you. As long as you ain't messing with babies and puppies, I don't care what you do. Those things are off limits. Babies and puppies. You're not hurting babies and puppies. I don't care. It's none of my business what you do.
Right.
I mean, some of the things, you know, I grew up in a more conservative thinking, and some of the things I don't understand, like just like the LGBTQ and all the extra letters. I joke around and say the alphabet game, but I still respect it. I still respect it. I'm just, I just knew at LGBTQ, and I'm like, okay. And then adding the other stuff is like, it's kind of overkill. That was the queerest for, but everybody needs representation, because if they didn't have the G in there, I wouldn't feel represented the same way as somebody who was non-binary or you know, stuff like that. So because it's not my life experience, that doesn't mean I take away from their life experience. So transitioning, I transitioned up to moving to Atlanta and moving away. I was like, you know what? I got to separate myself. I was 21 years old. I was like, I can't live my life. I can't have a relationship. I feel like I'm living a lie. The pressure was building on me. And I'm like, I have to move because I can't face the idea of my dad and my mom finding out, or my brother finding out that I'm gay. And I didn't want to disappoint them. Like, that was my biggest fear, because I always try to be the best student, the best child, the respectful one. I follow the rules, I listen. And you have your ups and downs. You may argue with your parents about this or curfew or whatever, but I was a very, very respectable child, and I always never wanted to disappoint my dad. Because my dad is like, my everything. So, he's my rock, and it's not often that you have a two-parent home. Oh, that's 4. Two-parent home, and then you have a father who's present and involved, and he showed up at football games. He showed up to my track meets, and he was there for the PTO meetings. He was there for my graduation. You know what I mean? And he set such a high precedent and an example for me to live by. I was like, I can't let him down. And I felt like if he knew that I was gay, I would let him down. So I moved 5 hours away to Atlanta, Georgia, and created another facade that I showed my parents. And then I'm living my life in Atlanta. I'm talking about, I had the whole 9 yards. Like, if I was dating somebody, and most men are very feisty. So any problems I had with a lot of men, it sounded like I was talking about a female. I just say a female name. Like, I was that deep into it. Like, I was dedicated.
Wow.
To it. Like, it was a show. Like, it was, soon as my dad called, my voice deepens. The cadence talk about.
Wow.
Yeah, I really, in my mind, it was like, I'm going to not disappoint him, and I would rather die first before he finds out. That was the whole thing about not telling him. Well, my mom, she's more liberal, and so she always said, if I had a gay kid, I wouldn't care. I just don't care. And her and my dad had those conversations. I just never heard them. They had those conversations before I was even born. I never knew they had those conversations until I talked to my mom. My mom came to visit me, and I was like 7 tequila shots in. And I was like, I'm just gonna tell her. I'm just gonna tell her. So she's sitting on the patio. She's smoking a cigarette. She like to smoke like the Misties 120, so it's them long cigarettes because she's a very sophisticated lady. So she's talking about, I don't know, Christmas coming up and how she's gonna make some wreaths, and like I call her the Black Martha Stewart. So she's very motherly in that sense. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it. You know what? I need another shot. I go take another shot. All right, I'm just gonna tell her. You know what? So 7 shots in, I just opened up the screen door. I said, Mom, I got something to tell you. And she was like, okay. She was like, you got somebody pregnant? I said, no. Don't, no. You know, some people would like to think that can happen. But nevertheless, I said, no, Mom, I'm gay. She takes a long drag, blows it out, and said, okay. Anyways, so we're going to go to such and such and do this and do that. I'm like, that's it? That's it? I created a monster. I thought she was going to throw the cigarette at my head and beat me with a Bible or something. That's the monster I created in my head. And then she turned around, she was like, oh no, everything okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just drunk. She's like, oh, okay. I was like, and then I'm crying. She's not crying. I'm crying. And she was like, is everything okay? And I'm like, yes, I'm drunk. I don't even like tequila like that. But that just went over well. Well, and I think that was like in 2017, 2018. So the next thing was, I'm going to tell my dad. So every year I'm like, you know what? I'm going to tell my dad. I'm going to tell my dad. Then another year happened. Then I'm going to tell my dad. Then I'm going to wait till everything's good. Then I'm going to tell my dad. And then another year comes, and another year comes, and another year. And it was just year after year. Mind you, I'm in a relationship. I've been in a relationship with my fiance since 2017. So this has been 5 years, and I want to tell him so bad because me and my dad talk about everything, like everything. We have a very close relationship, and every time he asks me, "Are you talking to anyone?" and I say no, I literally die on the inside because I want to tell him. I gotta tell him. I gotta tell him. And so what happened was this year, I posted a picture. My dad doesn't have a Facebook. So I posted a picture of me and my fiance. We did a photo shoot like a year ago. And on our anniversary, I posted a picture of us. Like he's on my back. We wearing alternate colors and stuff like that. Like, and all that good stuff. And I don't think I write this long, beautiful sonnet and this on how much I love you, blah, 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 blah. About a week later, I'm at work. My dad gives me a call, and I hear like a bit of a distress in his voice. I'm like, "Hey, Dad, like what's going on?" He said, "Do you have a minute?" I said, "Yeah, I got a New York minute. Let me step outside real quick." So I'm thinking he about to tell me like, "Oh, somebody broke into the house, or you know, somebody wrecked the car, or something like that." I'm thinking of something along those lines. So I step outside of work. It's a very bright day, and the birds flying, people driving by, going over the little speed hump and everything. And he said, "Okay, I'm gonna ask you a question. Just be honest with me." I'm like, "You gonna ask me what?" And he said, "Are you gay?" When I tell you everything stopped, the birds stopped flying and looked at me and said, "What you gonna say?" The lady go with the speed bump, hit the speed bump, stopped, rolled down her windows. And in my mind, I thought she said, "What are you?" The lady was lost, and she was asking me directions. But I literally, in that moment, I thought the lady was asking me, "Are you gay? What you gonna say?" And I'm like, oh man, yeah, you gotta go around, you gotta drive around and everything. And I know she was looking at me like, what is wrong with this guy? I'm like shaking. I said, yeah, I'm gay. What's wrong? What's the problem? So I just said it, and then I'm literally dying in the inside. I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to be banned from the house. He's about to tear me out. It's going to be chaotic. It's just I prepare myself because I created a monster. I created this enemy in my head and how I perceive my father based off of other people, or a couple of things that he said, but never directly or never super harmful, but just stuff, how guys say, oh no, I don't do no gay stuff and all that kind of stuff. So I amplified that. I made a monster out of this. And so with that being said, he said, he took a deep breath and he said, before you say anything, let me say something. Let me talk to you. And I'm thinking, here it goes. This the end. And he said, I am so sorry that I have ever, it chokes me up. But he said, I'm so sorry that I have ever made you feel like you couldn't tell me something like that. And I'm so sorry if I have ever said anything to make you feel like that you couldn't come and tell me something as important, as big as this in your life. We talk about everything, and I just felt like if you were gay, you would have told me. And because you didn't tell me, I didn't think you was gay. I was blown away.
Mm-hmm.
He could have told me anything else, and I would have been less surprised. He could have told me he won the lottery for $1 billion to tell me to quit my job. And I was more surprised about that response than anything. And I was so surprised because I have made him a monster that he wasn't. I made him a person that he wasn't. And I created this idea of him being this Bible thumping, stubborn black man that's just gonna just knock me out if I'm gay. And that's just not him. He's just not that person. He's a very open person, a very logical person about stuff. And that right there was the best thing or the most love I've ever felt from my dad in my life.
Right.
I felt so loved in that moment. Oh Lord. I don't want to cry. But
well, I think it's so interesting because it's like, you've got that moment with the colleague, Rebecca, where it was like she was thinking you were an adversary. And you had that exact same experience, but now it was with your father, is you thought he was going to be an adversary. And suddenly like that, it's like he turned to an ally and was just kind of like, oh, who knew?
Yeah.
And so now you kind of have an idea of what she felt like as well. It was like everything comes down to that one moment, and it's like, oh my gosh, what a huge relief. It's like,
right.
So
it was
wow.
Surreal. It was a very surreal like moment. It was like, is this real? Like I never felt that before when you living in a moment and it doesn't feel real. I felt out of touch with reality. And it was like, oh, this is real. This is really happening. And I had to ask him a question. Or like, how do you know? Like, what made you ask me that? And he said, your Facebook post. And I'm like, you don't got a Facebook. And he said, your uncle, I follow my uncle on Facebook. Your uncle seen the post. And asked him, is D gay? That's my nickname, D. Is D gay? And he was like, shit, no. He would have told me. He would have told me he was gay. He not gay. And he was like, let me see these pictures. And he seen pictures like, oh, yeah, he gay. Them niggas sharing hats. He knew about pictures. They sharing hats. And then so before this was the turning point though. So he was like, before he spoke to me, my cousin died in 2020 of leukemia. All right. So my uncle told him like, hey, before you call him, before you talk to him, I want you to sit and think about, what you're gonna say, because you have your son. they're here. You can hug them. You can call them and say, hey, man, I love you. Hey, let's go fishing. Hey, let's go do this, that, and the third. I don't. My only son is gone. So before you call him, you need to think about this and think about how much you love him and what's important, and you don't want to put your foot in your mouth. What I didn't know when he had that conversation, my dad took a whole day off from work to sit and think about what he was going to say to me and how he was going to present it in a way that his intentions was well, but his words was wrong. And he executed it beautifully. He couldn't have did it no better, other than saying, by the way, I won the lottery too. That's the only way to top that.
Right.
But that was one of those moments like you can't duplicate that feeling. You can express it and people can feel it, but just in that moment, it's like, oh my God, I wasted all this time. I could have been told him. I could have been expressed that, but God and the universe have a way of doing stuff at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
That it happened at the right time. Maybe if I would have told him earlier, he probably wouldn't have been mad, but he might have said something. He might have put his foot in his mouth. But that was before my cousin passed, and he didn't get a chance to talk to my uncle first. And, you know what I mean? So you never know beforehand how it would have been. But that was the moment. That was perfect. And I am so blessed because my story is very different from a lot of people's stories.
Right.
Both my parents love me so much that they don't care if I'm gay. And then my mom told me that her and my dad had these conversations before we were born. We had a gay kid. My dad said he wouldn't care. He said you might get talked about at Thanksgiving, but we don't care. Like you better come with the jokes. But that's the premise, and that's the mindset that they have.
So here's a question for you, DrBev. How did you find out about David's story?
Well, let me start with, I found out about David when he came to Phoenix to visit us for Thanksgiving. At the time, my sister and I were sharing a house, and that's David's grandmother. And so when I opened the door and David walked in, I was like, oops, there you go. I was like, he's family. He's double family.
You know, sometimes the straight people, you can be in the closet, but to gay people, you stand in a glass case.
Exactly.
Very much so.
Exactly. So I knew, but I didn't say anything because it's up to him to come out to whomever. I never even mentioned it to my sister. I said, that's David. He will handle it the way he needs to. In the meantime, my daughter and the rest of the crew, they also peeped this whole card. We all knew, so we had fun. So when I was in getting ready to go to Mobile, David and I talked. I asked if he was going to come, and for some reason, I just asked out of the clear, does your family know about you? And he started telling me the story. That's how I heard the story, and I was just totally blown away. Totally, because I wanted to know if my sister knew specifically. And then he told me the story about the whole family. And I was just taken. I was just like, I've had my story of coming out. I've heard other people's stories of coming out. Some of them so very, very sad. And these was just enlightening. It was just like wonderful. It was like saying, okay, the world is changing family by family. And that's so important for our community. And it's so important for other young people to also hear David's story, because a lot of them are also building monsters in their head about their family and their parents. And so I was just, when David agreed to do the podcast, I was very happy and really hoping that we could get the other side of the story from his father, from his sister, who also had an experience with David coming out. And so I'm just hoping that some future podcasts, maybe we can have them on again.
No, that would be great. But I also love how, even though you're related, you didn't know the story until you asked the question. And
I
so
did
that's
not.
one of the things. It's like, ask questions. It's like,
Yeah.
that's one of the things. It's like, it's like, regardless of who you are, you have a history. You might not want to share that until someone asks the question about, hey, who are you? What are you? Does your family know? What does your family know about you? Who is your authentic self? I mean, there's all kinds of questions we can ask. And so I am so glad that you had that chance to go to Mobile
Yeah.
and ask that question. I mean, I'm sure it
Absolutely.
strengthened the bond between the two of you. It now strengthened the bond just knowing that story.
Well, it not only strengthened the bond between David and I, it also strengthened a bond and built a bond with other family members that I don't talk to that much, because
Right.
he made me feel free to be who I am, because throughout my whole relationship with my family, I just don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. However, since talking with D, I I'm in Florida right now at my sister's house, and I don't hesitate to say, okay, where's the gay area? I want to go hang out with some of my family, my other family, and I've never done that before. But I've been free to the point where I'm like, no, you all come on. I like to be able to go and sit in the gay community and have drinks or coffee or whatever, and talk to people, which I never did with my family before. And I'm just
So,
all on it now. And I can thank Dee for that.
I want to say, I mean, that's one of the things I think is great. I think that David sharing his story now
Hmm.
suddenly helped release you from some of the
That's
binds that you
right.
had with your family. And
Yep.
so, what an amazing story for both of you
Yep.
to now
Yes,
be
it
able
is.
to be honest with your families about who you are.
Yes. Up
Yeah,
front.
that's amazing.
Out and up front.
Indeed. With a big old smile,
Yes. Yes.
being
Yes. Yes.
yourself, nothing
Proud.
better.
Loud and proud.
Exactly.
Thank you, David.
Wow. David,
Thank you,
thank you
David.
so much for sharing your story with
No
us.
problem. I have many stories, so
Oh, and I'm sure, and I hope that we can do this again and talk about some of those other stories, because I think, so much of our history is oral history. It's
yeah.
like, it's like a lot of LGBTQ history is not in print.
Right.
It does not show up in newspapers and things like that. And so really just getting to hear different people's perspectives of how they have engaged with life, how they become their authentic selves, I think is so important for so many people to hear those stories.
Yes.
I agree 100%.
So cool. Well, David, thank you much for joining us today.
No
Hopefully we'll be
problem.
able to chat with you and maybe even some of your other family members in the future. Would be
Yes,
great.
that'd be awesome. I got my dad, my sister. Then I have another one of my best friends. He has a very traditional story about coming out. I say traditional in the fact that it was very traumatic. So,
Oh,
but
Okay.
yeah. So, but his story is it's a triumph story, but it's definitely like oh my god, like.
Wow.
And I've been telling and talking to him about it, and it's hard to get the schedules because he's a very busy man too. But
Right.
like his story is one for the books. Like it could probably be a lifetime
Wow.
TV show. How dramatic
Wow.
it happened. So definitely I want to get him on. I want to get my dad to, tell his version and what was going through his head. So
Right.
you
mm-hmm.
can so
Mm-hmm.
other parents and stuff can kind of conceptualize what is going on, and they can realize you have to mourn the idea of who you thought a person was and accept the reality.
Mm. Okay, so we can tell our listeners to stay tuned for part 2
Indeed, for
and
more of the story. So
coming
yeah,
out.
right.
LGBT coming out. Stay tuned. I love it.
Indeed.
Thank you.
More storytelling from so many other amazing folks. David, thank you much for joining us.
You're
Look
so
forward to
well.
hearing from you and some of your other family in the future. So
Yeah.
have a great rest of your day in balmy Atlanta.
Peace out.
All right. Wow, Bev, that was an amazing story. And I
It,
also love how, because of this podcast, that's how you found out about it.
I
I
know,
mean,
isn't that
it's like, I mean, yeah, that's amazing.
and it's something that we can, going towards the future, help other young people to come out with stories like that. It's wonderful. It's truly wonderful. I'm just happy to hear the story again. It just energizes me. It
Right.
does. It
Oh,
energizes me.
exactly.
So,
I mean, I can only imagine it's kind of like it's how he was feeling so under pressure at that moment. And then this huge release when it was like, oh
yeah,
my gosh, all these
yeah,
monsters I had built up aren't monsters at all.
exactly, exactly. And
So,
I want to thank you also, Marshall, for uh, working with me and with the community to bring about these kind of stories. I truly appreciate you.
oh,
And
that's what I mean, we all just try to make the community a better place for all of us.
exactly, exactly. And you're doing wonders doing that. Thank you.
And you are as well. So, all right. So let's say goodbye until next time to everybody. Doc Bev.
Okay. All righty. We'll see
All
everybody
right.
on the next one.
Indeed. Thank you all so much for joining us.